Thank you, Can Corla. So can I say, first of all, that I'm very pleased to support this bill, and I'm especially pleased that the Government will not oppose the proposal. I think this bill will be warmly welcomed by victims of domestic violence who work outside the home. The figures on domestic violence in Ireland are shocking. We've heard them quoted several times tonight. About 15% of women and 6% of men have suffered severe domestic violence. And I think what's even more shocking, and of course we're all aware of it, that during the COVID lockdown, those numbers increased significantly. I think the number of extra calls to Women's Aid and other groups increased by something like 25%. And it's worthwhile saying that during the lockdown, there were real efforts by Gardaí, by advocacy groups, and also by the Government in the extension of the temporary rent supplement to victims of domestic violence to allow them to escape the terror of their own homes. And while it's not the issue in question here, the fact that many counties, including my own constituency of Sligo, Leitrim, North Roscommon and South Donegal, and in fact whole swathes of this country do not have dedicated refuges, is a disgrace. I know that you, Minister, are determined to do something about this, but we need to do something as quickly as possible. But as I said, I'm very pleased to see that the Government will work with the opposition and with stakeholders to put legislation in place to ensure 2 weeks paid leave for victims of domestic violence. This will give a small window of opportunity to victims to try to manage their lives. Now, very often the income that the domestic violence victim has is their only opportunity to exert any control over their own lives and that of their families. The loss of any income because the victim is simply unable to work is simply adding to the cruelty and awfulness of their situation. Can I check with the Can Corla? Am I sharing? Oh, I wasn't aware. Sorry. Apologies. Didn't realise. You'll have to tell me when I need to stop. But anyway, it's also important to remember that many victims may be in precarious employment, and therefore any absences, any inability to work or to deal with on-demand work, shift work, split hours, etc. The terror that many victims experience at home is just exacerbated by their fear that they might lose their jobs, and unfortunately some do. Sometimes victims of domestic abuse are too ashamed to go to work because of the visible signs of abuse. Sometimes they need time to see their solicitor, go to court, or just get a little bit of support from family members and friends. It just gives them a breathing space. So when we implement the measures in this bill, we will be stepping up to the mark in regard to some of the recommendations from ILO Convention 190. And it calls for, amongst other things, first of all, paid leave for victims of domestic violence. And it also calls, Minister, for flexible work arrangements and protection for victims and temporary protection against dismissal, and the inclusion of domestic violence in workplace risk assessments. So I see the Can Corla's nodding, which means it's time for me to finish. But perhaps when we're looking at this bill, we might look at some of those points I raised there and possibly put them in as amendments. Thank you.